Hello, everyone. While Vladimir Putin continues his indiscriminate attacks on civilian targets in Ukraine, we have seen a definite turn in the momentum of that war. Ukraine forces are not only continuing to bravely defend their capital city of Kyiv, they have now gone on the offense and have regained some of the territory that was previously taken by Russian forces. Some former British Special Forces volunteers who are actually on the ground assisting the Ukrainians recently responded to a question by American reporters who asked if they believed if the Ukrainians could defeat the Russians. These elite soldiers answered that not only did they believe they could win, they went as far as stating that they believed they would defeat Russia. Look, there's no doubt that the world has been inspired by the Ukrainians' willingness to fight against the massively superior military of Russia. However, their fight for freedom is reminiscent of our own history, and especially our fights to gain our independence and maintain our freedoms. It's no surprise that President Zelensky, in his address to Congress several days ago, reminded Americans of our own heritage, especially of those times we stood firm on our freedoms, even against overwhelming odds, and of our reputation of not running from adversity, but taking our problems head on. Unfortunately, the strength of our nation and our history of self-reliance has been seemingly forgotten by many in Washington, D.C. And instead of addressing the problems that we are facing, the Democrats in Congress are just watching while Americans are struggling with numerous problems. Our economy is showing signs of a recession. Inflation continues to rise, groceries are becoming scarcer and more expensive, fuel prices have skyrocketed, and our border is being overwhelmed by illegal immigration. In fact, Democrats are not only ignoring these issues, they are focused on continuing to push forward their divisive, liberal, big government socialist agenda. For example, one of the major issues facing veterans in Georgia and, quite frankly, across the nation is that since Joe Biden has become president, the Veterans Administration has been denying veterans access to private doctors that are outside the VA system. Although the law specifically directs the VA to refer veterans to outside providers for certain medical services, the Biden administration has been actively denying veterans this access in an attempt to keep complete government control over veterans' health care. This has become a bipartisan concern in Congress, and I and many others have been pressing the VA to stop this illegal activity. But instead of bringing the VA secretary before Congress to answer questions about these actions, the House Veterans Affairs Committee held a hearing this week on how to prevent domestic violent extremism among veterans. Now, I have to say that I don't believe in any way that violent extremism is the most pressing issue facing those who have fought and sacrificed for our nation. But getting proper care and access to their benefits is much more important. But House Democrats are continuing to seek more opportunity and how to further divide Americans along political, racial, and ideological lines. Another example is that as inflation rises to historic levels in the United States, it's become the number one concern of most Americans. The surging in prices on everything from food to fuel and groceries to childcare is beginning to significantly slow down the economy, which is already showing signs of stagnation, if not full-blown recession. However, this economic slowdown isn't caused by natural economic factors, but is totally self-imposed by terrible policies from the White House and excessive deficit spending by Congress. I recently questioned the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, about the impact big Democrat spending is having upon driving up inflation, and he agreed that it is a contributing factor to our inflation. Other contributing factors are the president's restriction of domestic oil production, massive regulations on businesses, and suppressing Americans from returning to the workforce. All issues which Congress could and should be diligently working on right now. However, instead of addressing rising inflation, the House Financial Services Committee this week held hearings on racism and discrimination in home appraisals, and another hearing on discrimination against minorities by overdraft fees. Again, issues that have no factual basis and are brought up to further divide Americans at a time we should be coming together to address these significant issues. It wasn't only in the committees that Congress was ignoring key issues. The bills that came before the House floor also reflected the tone deafness of Democrats to the needs of America. Instead of addressing the growing crisis at the southern border or lowering fuel prices by increasing domestic production of oil, The House voted on 18 bills this week that included the renaming of federal buildings, adding new statues in the Capitol, and even creating a historical archive of the COVID-19 pandemic. However, the highest priority for Democrats this week wasn't to address the violent crime that is surging throughout America's major cities. It was a bill that passed the House on Friday morning that circumvents state laws and legalizes marijuana across the country. This bill even goes as far as providing government assistance in the form of small business loans to marijuana growers and producers. As I have said many times in the past, the major issues that we are facing in this nation, the economy, national security, crime, illegal immigration, and food shortages are all self-imposed due to bad, big government socialist policies by this administration and the progressive Democrats that are controlling Congress. Now, we can and eventually will get out of this mess, but only once we start to focus on undoing these harmful policies and once again getting the federal government off the backs of businesses and individuals. Things will eventually turn around, and at some point when they do, it will be time for us to pull together and show the world that we haven't forgotten who we are as Americans. And just like the people of Ukraine, we can put our differences aside and pull together to restore our nation to one that is free, safe, and full of opportunity for everyone. God bless you, and may God bless America.